Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So Avatar News has put out another story, this one about the Netflix show that apparently he's been waiting a while to put out. And then there's only one other small bit of information that may not even be Avatar focused. So we'll get into this article here. So here's the headline: exclusive, Avatar Studios and Netflix are collaborating on the live action series. To me, having read this article, that's the news. This is technically kind of true, but it's a little bit, kind of disingenuous to, I think, put that in the headline without the clarification of what's actually said in the post. This doesn't seem as extreme as it actually is when you actually read it. So, just straight away based off the headline, this is getting into this idea of, I think, because of the way that basically Avatar Studios seemed to form in terms of Mike and Brian leaving the project, Avatar Studios then going on to form, you would assume that Avatar Studios is not really or barely connected to the live action series. But I'm guessing the takeaway here has to be just that Avatar Studios is a studio at Paramount. Paramount ultimately owns the Avatar The Last Airbender franchise, license, copyright, whatever way you want to talk about it. And so they are going to have some sort of a hand in everything that is official Avatar. Even Dark Horse, Abrams books with the novels, Magpie Games with the Legends RPG. They all ultimately are using it themselves to make their own product, but they're getting the sort of official stuff from fundamentally Paramount Avatar Studios. So we always felt that connection potentially wasn't quite there with the Netflix show, but it does actually seem like it's maybe more there than we actually thought. So let's get into the details here. So, we got this was actually from a while ago. Avatar Studios was listed on, one of the VFX studio websites mentioned, it was was it that one, Deneg or something like that, I think, mentioned Avatar Studios. So that was one connection. I was like, oh cool, they actually seem to be doing something. Now, he's saying that the reason he put up that kind of roadmap thing, including the Netflix show, is because the live action show is on Paramount Avatar slate internally. So they're really considering this, a proper Avatar project, even though it's done by effectively a rival streaming company ultimately. But they're still considering it Avatar because Avatar is their franchise. So that makes sense, I think, to a certain degree as well. And then, it has the rights to adapt not just the show, but also the extended universe, which makes sense, like if Avatar Studios is more heavily involved, that they have access to the other stuff. He mentions again that Avatar Kuruk's backstory from the novels looks like it will be incorporated in here to a certain degree, because, of course, we know Avatar Kuruk has been cast for the live action show, when, if you watch ATLA Book 1, which is what Season 1 is going to be, Kuruk is not actually in there at all. So them doing anything to flesh this out is, a kind of change. I guess it's utilizing, at the very least, stuff from the show when we eventually did cover Kuruk, but now it seems to maybe also be incorporating some of the other stuff from the novels as well. So it looks like when we get to the Northern Water Tribe, Avatar Kuruk is going to play somewhat of a more significant role, which I think makes sense, because he was already sort of alluded to in the finale for Book 1, with Ko mentioning that he stole the face of someone a past Avatar loved, Umi, of course, and that was later explained in the series. So straight away there's one obvious thing where they are readjusting something using either just ATLA material or also incorporating novel material in, and it's just an example of that as well. Now, because it's fairly tightly written, there's not that much extra material that sort of needs to be incorporated into ATLA. I doubt we're going to see tons of this, but there'll be, I suppose, bits and pieces as we go through. So, live action shows using the new element symbols, but here's the kind of news, I suppose, why he has this in the title. The live action show includes new Avatar Studios canon that, at the time of writing and filming, wasn't released yet. So here's the bigger point here, the explanation. For example, I have confirmation that a certain new piece of Canon info was already in the live action script at the start of filming in November-December 2021. That was then revealed to be Avatar Studios canon in an Avatar Studios release the next year in 2022. It's worded a little weirdly to just get across the idea that, like, you know, basically a book, because that's the only content from Avatar Studios that technically came out in 2022. In one of the books released that's official in 2022, this information was revealed publicly to us, but that information was in the kind of script back at the end of 2021. Now, I have been told by someone that apparently what Avatar News is referring to here is literally just the place name Wolf Cove, which obviously is the name of the place where Katara and Sokka are from, which is obviously in ATLA just referred to as the Southern Water Tribe, but we know there are more different villages even back then than we saw. So the name specifically of the place where they're from is Wolf Cove, and it's basically the capital. So it looks like, so they had that more accurate information of a specific place name within the Southern Water Tribe that was included here and then released publicly in 2022. Now, specifically where we heard about Wolf Cove, it was in the Legends RPG game, where there is a map in there and it specifically notes Wolf Cove. Also, it is in the Avatar Generations mobile game as well. So it just highlights that this is a new piece of material that is being used in other projects, basically. Now, because that's the example, that's what informs this, and maybe look other stuff as well. But this is the main example he's going with to make this headline here. Does that seem as extreme as necessary? Because we know that end of 2021, the Kickstarter I think was already done at this point. They were working on the books because we got the PDFs, like, you know, only a couple of months later, and they're obviously working on them before that. So, you know, there's obviously a little bit of a case here where you don't know for sure, like, where first this information came from. But the idea is that at least publicly, we only got it in 2022. And then internally at Avatar Studios, it was known in 2021 and was obviously used in early stages of the Legends RPG, as well as being able to be used by the Netflix live action show also. This is where, like, there's a lot of internal stuff with Avatar Studios that we don't really know about, like regards to, like, do they have like an internal database of like Avatar information, or do they just have to work with sort of like the continuity guy over at Avatar Studios, and he had that new information that he was able to relay to them. But if it is just a place name, I don't think that means as much as you kind of think, because we know that when Avatar Studios formed, there was a bunch of basically new art assets created, and I'm assuming to go along with that, a certain amount of extra new kind of core information was also solidified, and that's where probably the likes of a lot of the Roku information that's in the Legend RPG came from. That's where a lot of extra sort of place names came from, that can now be used elsewhere within the franchise. Now, again, I don't know for 100% for sure if absolutely certain he meant Wolf Cove, but at least someone told me that that's what I think it's alluding to. So this apparently means that Avatar Studios is contributing new material to the live action show before they release it publicly. Okay, that's fine, because if Avatar Studios is working with it, that's the same as them working on, say, like a book, and the publisher of that book having access to information before they release said book. Like, I don't think that that's as amazing of a thing as we think. It's, again, just getting across the idea that there seems to be actual communication between the Netflix show and Avatar Studios beyond what we maybe expected. So theoretically, any new additions in the live action show could also be canon in upcoming books and animation, etc. That's fine. That's fairly reasonable expectation and stuff like that. If they have new stuff that they add in that we didn't know about before, either it is going to be exclusive to the live action to do the story whatever way it's doing, or it's something new that we will find out about later. Now, there's obviously going to be stuff in the live action that just blatantly isn't canon to the main material. Like, for instance, like, we already have the whole idea that they seem to have replaced Oyaji with Suki's mother, what's her name now, Yukari, in the Kyoshi Island stuff. So there is something where, unless they also reveal that there is an Oyaji, and maybe they could canonically reveal that Suki's mother's name is Yukari, we don't really know. Right now, it seems like that is a slightly different approach to doing the Kyoshi Island stuff. So there's all that. He goes on about canon here a little bit. I know people are obsessed with the concept. I think to some degree, rightfully so. I hope this makes people focus on it less and more on just how well made something is. And this is the problem. I disagree fundamentally with the idea that, you know, how an adaptation tackles canon is not part of basically how well made it is, because it absolutely is. Because you look at it and it's like, say, the Last Airbender movie, panned basically completely across the board by the entire fan base. And yes, people make fun of the production, but fundamentally I think you look at that and it's like the costumes were pretty good, the backgrounds, the sets were pretty good, the use of CG I think was actually quite decent. Where the Last Airbender movie went wrong was in that kind of like writing script department, which is fundamentally that movie establishing its movie canon based on the original source material canon. So most of the criticisms about that movie come from the way that movie does changes, the way they adapted things, the way they approached doing different things. And that is an example of how well made or not it is. And that's all about canon. So I think everyone sort of gets the idea that this is a good production. And I think, again, with the new live action show, it is probably going to come down to basically canon and how well they do the adaptation as to what actually is the case. And you know, he talks about here, like, anything new added to the live action show could be from Avatar Studios, could be exclusive to the live action, like I was saying. Why not just focus on how good it is, especially knowing both canons just did whatever is best for the show? Because, again, this is where canon, like, is important. Like, there's a sense where, like, you want them to explain at certain points why they made specific changes and didn't, in a way, just do it accurately, when it seems like you could have just done it there instead of making a change. So, you know, okay, Avatar News doesn't seem to particularly care about this, but, you know, other people do. And again, that's just his opinion. He's not reporting on any official stuff when it comes to, like, this opinion bit here. Mentions Game of Thrones about some reason. Okay. And yeah, the info comes from both my Netflix and Paramount sources. Both sides working together. There aren't really sides. Good things about it. And yeah, it's all Avatar, which is, like, fine. But again, this is fine. But people ultimately, fundamentally, are an Avatar fan primarily because of the Avatar animation main continuity. And so this is just an adaptation, and it's important to note that difference. Because, again, you don't want people assuming that anything new that happens in the live action show is automatically canon to the main continuity. So canon, continuity, that sort of stuff, it does matter ultimately. So that's that. So it's a bit of a weird article where, like, when I first read this, I was initially like, whoa, wow, what does this mean? This seems kind of crazy. But then when you read it and realize that, like, effectively most of the article seems to just come from this, which, if it is just that one place name, that's the big kind of deal here, I don't think that means as much as it probably does. It seems like at the very least Netflix have the ability to go to Avatar Studios to get confirmation on basically, is this detail actually in place in actual canon or not, and they can get feedback on that, and so they're able to incorporate some of that other stuff into play. And that seems perfectly fine. That's reasonable because, again, Avatar Studios is effectively a studios under Paramount. So, you know, Netflix are using the Avatar license basically from Paramount. So I guess it makes sense. It just seems that in, I guess, the few years since Avatar Studios has formed, the relationship is a little bit better than we probably thought it was going to be. Because again, notice how Mike and Brian aren't mentioned in any of this, because Avatar Studios doesn't exclusively mean Mike and Brian. Mike and Brian could still not basically have any involvement with the Netflix show, in that they could just be basically like telling like the continuity person, these are some new details that we're going to make canon in other material. And then he is the one who's maybe interacting with the Netflix thing to say that, hey, this was just confirmed, you can use this in your show. That's the way Avatar Studios operates. Because again, it's more than Mike and Brian. So that's the kind of thing here. Because again, it's trying to create like this drama around like what exactly happened there when, you know, Mike and Brian are doing the stuff that they want to do now. This show is also happening, run by other people, and it's separate but still sort of interlinked with Avatar Studios, and I think that's the main takeaway here ultimately. Other piece of news is this. So again, it's about Avatar Weiss Schwarz. Again, we don't know for sure, but what I've been talking about a little bit, the Bushiroad English Conference for Winter 2023 is coming on January 28th, and they will be doing a live stream, as you can see here at the time, and it's during the World Finals. So it's actually a pretty big deal, like how this is all coming together. So do keep in mind, it will be covering news about Bushiroad's other games as well. So Cardfight Vanguard, Vanguard Zero, and all this other stuff. But Weiss Schwarz will be in there as well. And because it's specifically their English conference, I think there's some expectation that they would say something more about Avatar, because notably I think the main thing is just that they don't have images of like say what the trial deck looks like. They don't have an image of what the booster box like packaging looks like. So I think they'll want to in one of these conferences directly say that, hey, Avatar now has a date, these are the products, this is what it looks like, and it would be cool if there was maybe some card reveals, but I don't usually. These aren't necessarily the places for card reveals outside of just they're advertising card games, so they're going to show off cards in just to make that clear, obviously. But I don't think like we'll be getting tons upon tons of Avatar card reveals. If we get one, I think it will be like one or two. But I'm not even sure that that's going to happen. Again, I feel it should be mentioned for sure, just because I think, again, it's Avatar. And I think they're pretty hyped about having Avatar, and they want to make that clear. It is an English edition original, so it makes sense to mention it again at the Winter Conference, especially because they couldn't say much about it at the last conference. So I think that's really, really important as well to get that across. So I think it'll be mentioned at least that it's on the lineup coming out, especially because like we're still like what 11 days away from this, so. We're getting to the point like when we hit here, you know, we're not too far away. It's like what 4.5 months away from the release of the set when we get here. Makes sense. So again, it's one of those things. Maybe it won't be worth your time to fully make sure to kind of check out the full live stream. Maybe just check out the recording afterwards to see what the news is. Either way, I'll cover anything that comes out of this. But yeah, I think that's basically everything I want to talk about here. What are your thoughts on this Avatar news article here about the collaboration between Avatar Studios and Netflix? And then what exactly do you make of like what is actually said in the post about what this headline means? But let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.